So, what's it take to have a sexually healthy relationship? Some people might think a healthy sex life means, oh, active, frequent. We're engaged a lot. I don't know, like that's what healthy is. It's a measure of how often this is happening. But what I want to draw your attention to are the 6 principles of sexual health that were identified by the WHO, the World Health Organization, because I think these are really impactful and really important to consider when you're thinking about your own sexual relationship with your partner. All right, so the first principle of sexual health is consent. This is the most universal sexual health principle on the planet. It really is important, and it means voluntary cooperation. It's permission to be sexual with willing partners, it's permission to do particular sexual acts. It's about enthusiasm. Now, I will say there is a spectrum of consent. It can be okay to feel kind of neutral about something and still give consent, doing this sort of more for you. But we're looking for neutral or better. That is consent. We want to know that our partner wants to be doing this stuff with us, wants to be having sex with us. And in new relationships, often you're establishing the consent along the way through each step in a sexual interaction, perhaps, because you're just learning about each other, right? But we want each of you to have the space and the safety to speak up about what it is you want to do, what you don't want to do, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, because you want it to be clear. I want this and I want this with you. So you probably are going to be seeking consent along the way because you're just getting to know each other. And consent should be clear and unmistakable, right? If it's not ambiguous, if you don't know, err on the side of caution, right? Ask for consent, check in. Now, you may be thinking, I'm in a relationship. We already know each other. Aren't we beyond having to seek consent? And it gets a little gray here or more complicated maybe because couples do develop a repertoire of sort of consented activities, things we do all the time, we know we both like. We don't have to check in on this all the time. And consent incidents can still occur. We can take this for granted and we can stop paying attention to the signals we're getting from ourselves or from our partner. What we want can change over time. What is pleasurable can change over time. Something that we have done with consent in the past maybe is unappealing or unpleasant now. Just because we consent to something on Tuesday doesn't mean we want it on Thursday. So we need to make sure that we're speaking up about this and communicating. So if you are starting to have any lack of interest or shift in your openness to a sexual activity, speak to your partner about it. And if you get any sign from your partner that they are less than enthusiastic, that they are tolerating something, that they are checked out, that they don't want to be doing this, any confusion about this, check in and ask. Don't just keep going because it used to be on the menu. The second principle of sexual health is non-exploitation. Healthy sex is non-exploitative. It requires that, right? Exploitation is when one person leverages power or control to receive sexual gratification. It compromises. That exploitation is leveraging something. It's putting pressure on somebody in a way where they're vulnerable, so it compromises their ability to consent. Now, intentional exploitation is bad, right? Is ruthless. It's insensitive, it's manipulative, it's entitled, it's going to be really damaging. But it's also possible to have more subtle forms of exploitation. Things that you are not meaning to do, but you're doing by accident. Pressure, power dynamics, guilt, there being some emotional consequence to somebody saying no. It leads one person to feel like they've got less of a choice. So again, in a committed and healthy, happy relationship, you might be thinking this can't happen, but it can. I see this a lot with desire discrepancy. First of all, you could have more power in your relationship. Maybe you're the breadwinner, and that could play out in sex. Maybe your partner is afraid to speak up or doesn't feel like they have the same kind of choice because what if you leave and they're hindered financially? You could also, though, just react badly when they say no to sex, when they don't want it. You could get, what I call the 7 dwarfs: grumpy, mopey, weepy, needy, whiny, surly, resentful. If you take it personally and feel rejected, even if you're not trying to impose this on them, they could be getting the message, I should have sex with you so you feel better. You could be exploiting their their existing sense of feeling guilty or feeling broken or feeling like this is their problem, and giving the message, even unintentionally, that they should do this for you, that you have a need to be met. This is subtle stuff, but it's really worth looking at because it shows up so much of the time in couples with desire discrepancy that are struggling with that. So, again, watch for cues that they're not enthusiastic about this, that this is some sort of obligation for them. They're just doing it for you in a way that they can't feel good about, that it's a chore, that they're just getting it done. There could be ways you're piling on to their sense of guilt and pressure that fundamentally are exploitative. All right, the third principle is honesty, because healthy sex is honest. It requires open and direct communication with you and with your partner. So, honesty with yourself about what it is you like, what you want, what turns you on, where your lines are, your boundaries are. Honesty with your partner about those same things, being willing to be open and share what it is you like, what you want to be doing, what you don't want to be doing. Honesty encompasses conversations around pleasure, around sexual functioning, around eroticism, around gender, sexual relationship diversity, all kinds of things that people think about and want. Can you be open with your partner? Each person has a responsibility to figure out their own standards of this and what they're going to share as it relates to their partners. Now, in a committed relationship, maybe you have thought of yourselves as very honest, but it's worth looking at. Are there any places where you're holding back, where you're not speaking honestly and sharing with your partner? Have things changed and you haven't wanted to talk about that? Are you avoiding any of the difficult conversations about how you're feeling, what you're wanting, what you're not wanting, what has changed? Those can be tricky, but that honesty is a foundation of sexual health. You can only get your needs met and it really have this work for you, and same for your partner, if you two will be honest with each other. Another principle of sexual health is shared values. So values play an important role in sex. What does sex mean to you? What is it for? What is the role of this in your relationship? How important is it to you and why? It's a way of connecting with your sexual standards and your ethics. Now, value differences can happen. We're not always exactly on the same page with our partner, right? Especially if we're going to be honest. But we can discuss those and accept those and come to working arrangements with each other. And that actually builds closeness and intimacy. And maybe it's been a long time since you've even thought about or considered what values you have around sex, or what values your partner has, or whether the two of you are aligned on that. Specific sexual acts that you guys are engaged in or interested in might be related to the meaning you make of that and the values you have. What role does this have in your relationship? And are you talking about those values? I find often that when couples start talking about values, what really matters to them and why, they can align way more easily about that than if they're just talking about how much are we having sex or what are we doing. If the value is intimacy between the two of us and freedom of expression and sharing pleasure, we can get on the same page about that. Then we can talk about, okay, what does this mean about what we're going to do? Now, healthy sex is definitely safe, protected from STIs, from HIV, from pregnancy, unwanted pregnancy, right? It's really important in terms of sexual health for anyone to feel free to engage in sexual activity without the fear of an unwanted consequence, right? A plan around contraception if you could potentially get pregnant from your sex, right? So you've got a choice about that pregnancy or not, so you can relax and show up. We want to prevent STIs, HIV, acquired diseases and infections that you don't want. It's really important because if you're worried about passing on some STI or potentially getting that, you're not going to be able to relax and enjoy, right? Knowledge is power here. So getting the knowledge about it, preparing for this, and setting yourself up for the safest sex that you can be having. Now, this may or may not be an issue in your relationship because you could be exclusively monogamous and both have been tested, and so STIs are not a risk. Maybe pregnancy is not a possibility. So this one, maybe you could check off the mark. But if not, if there is any doubt about whether somebody could get pregnant and they don't want to, or any doubt about whether you could pass on an infection, it's really important to be open about this, to make some strategies to figure out what you can do so there is protection so that you can go on to enjoy your sex life. And then lastly, the last of the six principles, which is my favorite, and I guess partly because it gets left off of a lot of conversations around what does sexual health mean? We think about, oh, prevent disease and pregnancy and, consent and things like that. Pleasure. Pleasure is the primary motivation for masturbation and partnered sex. Pleasure is so important. It is powerful. It is it's even political. Pleasure, I think, is our birthright in these human bodies. We are wired for this, and it's an important part of what is going on in sex. And it is part of what makes a sexual relationship healthy, that both people are experiencing pleasure. All people deserve pleasure, and healthy sex centers the pleasure of both people. It's hard to have pleasure in sex if the other five principles are not met. So maybe that's why it's number six. Through all stages of life, sexual health it's a balance of your safety and responsibility in sex with the curiosity and exploration of pleasure of yours and your partner's. Pleasure should be a focus in your sex life with your partner, pleasure for both of you. And remember, what pleases us can change over time. Our bodies are changing, at least because we're aging, but often in other ways too. It changes when our bodies respond differently. It changes as our hormones change. It changes as we're with the same person more. It just changes for reasons we can't even describe. So, keeping a focus on pleasure and keeping an open conversation about pleasure, keeping that part of the dialogue all the time. What are you liking? What feels good? What would feel good to me? Is going to do so much for your sexual relationship. So these six principles, which I just think are so beautifully illuminated and identified, can take you a long way in improving your sex life with your partner. So it's a wonderful starting point. So take stock of these. Think about them. Do they have room for improvement? Is there any area that you need to focus on and shore up so the two of you can really thrive in your sexual relationship?